Welcome back to College Football Addiction. Ole Miss fans, LSU fans, UF fans. I have some news for you all today, but I need you guys to stick with me. I'm not going to lie. It could get a little uncomfortable. In fact, it might get a little tense down in the comments. But trust me, you guys are going to want to stick this one out. I'm telling you right now, what I cover at the end of this video is critical information. So stay tuned, because I've got some Lane Kiffin news that is setting the internet on fire today. So let's talk about something that is very concerning that just happened, and it affects all three fan bases. And Ole Miss fans, I empathize with you because you guys are in the worst possible situation right now. And I genuinely am sorry for what you guys are having to go through. And I know how it feels. As an FSU fan, I know exactly what you guys are going through. I'm having flashbacks to Jimbo Fisher's glory days at FSU, where he was basically secretly talking to LSU every single year. He was treating FSU like a side piece while he was sneaking out after dark just to visit a good friend. But that's a story for a different day. LSU guys, you have to be feeling a little bit better right now. Congratulations on the new president and AD, and congratulations on the Louisiana governor not dragging you guys back into politics this week at least. I don't know about y'all, but I personally like to keep the politics and the football separate, if I can. I do have some good news for you guys. I really don't think any legitimate coach gives two rips about what the governor said. So you guys are going to be just fine. And UF fans, you guys seem awfully happy today. I wonder why. I think you know why. Well, let's get started. So today we're going to cover three very important things. I'm going to tell you guys something I think Ole Miss fans should be concerned about, because there's something that's bubbling down in Oxford, and it isn't a hottie toddy. Then after that, I'm going to tell you guys exactly how the whole Lane Kiffin timeline is going to play out, because I'm hearing a lot of different predictions on the timeline. I've heard so many people make predictions about how far into the CFP this will go, and some of this stuff is just pure craziness. I think a lot of people are not really thinking this through. So I'm going to tell you guys what all these other talking heads are missing so that you guys know exactly how it plays out. Before we get started with those first two, we're going to start with some other big news of the day that impacts all three of you guys. And that's the news that BetOnline just massively changed their betting odds for Kiffin to UF. And I mean massive. Can we get a drum roll on this? In the last 24 hours, the betting line for Lane Kiffin accepting the University of Florida coaching job went from plus 300 to minus 150. Now, again, for those in the back, we'll repeat it. The betting line for Kiffin to the Gators went from plus 300 to minus 150. For those of you who don't care anything about gambling, what this means is that basically the betting odds of Lane Kiffin taking the Florida job have greatly improved. So what exactly does this mean? Well, let's break it down. Last time I checked, Vegas is usually pretty good at predicting things. And usually when a betting line swings this quickly, it's because information is starting to leak. College football athletic departments are notoriously bad at keeping secrets. So let's talk about what might be leaking. Now, I don't know this for a fact, and I'm not reporting this, but maybe Lane reached out to his agent and told him to begin some preliminary negotiations with Florida. I mean, that would be the sort of thing that would greatly change the odds. But it could be other things. Things like an agent leaking false information to throw someone off the scent. Now, Ole Miss fans, I do have some good news for you on this. I really don't think you guys should worry about it, because for every fact that Vegas responds to, it sometimes responds to false information. And you oftentimes see it correct itself fairly quickly. But I'll tell you guys what should actually make you worried. If the odds continue to shift towards Florida over the next week, even after this huge move, that'd be a good sign that this wasn't just false information and that Lane was actually looking. But there's something else you guys should be concerned about. And the second thing we're here to talk about today is that I've heard a lot of other analysts say that Lane Kiffin doesn't know what he's going to do, and he's just head down, focused on the season. But I'm going to be honest with you guys. Indiana's Curt Cignetti was head down, focused on the season too. But he found the time to get a contract extension done. And SMU's Rhett Lashley was also head down, focused on the season. And he also found time to get a contract extension done. The idea that a guy is focusing only on the season and isn't thinking about his permanent job, his next job, is insane to me. And I love the Ole Miss fans that we have on here. You guys have been great. And I hate to be the one to tell you this, but Lane Kiffin is definitely considering these other jobs, or he would have definitely accepted an extension and just shut this down. Every coach knows the quickest way to avoid distraction is just by taking the extension. And he hasn't. And I do feel for you guys because you've already gone through this once before with Lane and Auburn. And I really thought Lane had turned the corner and wasn't going to do this again. I watched the ESPN documentary on Lane. I thought for sure he was happy in Oxford with his whole family there. But the fact that we're still having this conversation several weeks into it tells me that he's legitimately considering leaving. And there's no way to sugarcoat that. But let's also not forget Lane's close connection to Gainesville. He basically grew up idolizing Steve Spurrier. And his first date with his ex-wife and his children's mother was in Gainesville. So he's got some real history there too. Not nearly as much as he has in Oxford, but some. As an FSU fan, I was definitely hoping he would shut it down. So I'm in the same boat as the Ole Miss fans. We need to keep this man happy in Mississippi. I don't want to see UF fans happy with Lane Kiffin. So the last thing that we are going to talk about today is the timeline. I've heard so many people make predictions about how far into the college football playoffs this will go. I think I even heard Pate talking about the Gators waiting around until the first round. So this is how it's going to go down. First off, let's work under the assumptions that Lane Kiffin is both UF and LSU's top coaching target. So we'll say that he's both of their plan A. I think that's a safe assumption at this point. Rule number one that I want you to remember is that no multi-million-dollar organization, whether it's a business or a football team, is only going to have a plan A. Every successful business is going to have a plan A, a plan B, a plan C, a plan D, and so on. In other words, LSU and UF cannot possibly put all of their eggs into the Lane Kiffin basket. So now that you know number one's rule, I want you to think about the key dates that we have coming up. Let's run through them. First, we have the last games of the season for teams not in conference championships, which is Saturday, November 29th. The date's important because it will be a date that all coaching jobs are officially essentially available. In other words, anyone firing their coach who hasn't already pulled the trigger is going to do it right after this game. There's a good chance you see someone like FSU fire Mike Norvell and join the coaching search. And every coach on the market knows this. They're going to be waiting to see what options open up. The next key date we have is early signing day, which runs from December 3rd to December 5th. The next key date we have is the first round of the college football playoffs, which is going to be played on December 19th and December 20th. The final key date we have is when the transfer portal opens up, January 2nd through January 16th. Most teams who have fired their coach are going to want to have a replacement in hand before early signing day starts on December 3rd. So you're going to see teams move rapidly to hire their next coach to try and hold on to or add to their signing classes, meaning that any coach not named Lane Kiffin is very likely going to be hired between the last game on November 29th and the early signing day on December 3rd. For example, somebody like James Franklin is going to be hired during this time frame. He's going to want to try and salvage his signing class by meeting kids and getting them to stay committed. Now, remember what I said about rule number one. With rule number one in mind, you cannot even wait on a coach for the first round of the college football playoffs without knowing for sure that that coach is coming to your school. In other words, all your plan B, plan C, plan D coaching candidates are probably going to be off the market in the first few days after the last game is played on November 29th. So there's no way for LSU and UF to wait on plan A without being guaranteed that plan A is coming. And there's only one way that you can guarantee that plan A is coming. So if Lane Kiffin is going to UF or LSU, this is exactly how it's going to play out. And this is the only way it will play out. His agent is going to negotiate 2 contracts right now. And I'm talking right now. These details will be hammered out long before the last game, which may be why you see the odds changing in Vegas. His agent is going to negotiate 2 contracts. One contract will be a standard contract between the school and the coach. The other contract will be a transition contract between the school he is moving from and the school he is moving to. Lane will notify Ole Miss that he intends to leave, but he would like to coach through the college football playoff. He's going to ask to coach because he doesn't want to abandon his kids. because no coach would. And you, LSU and UF fans, want to understand that. You wouldn't want him to come coach your team if he was willing to abandon those kids anyway. And Ole Miss will have to decide whether or not to allow him to coach in the playoffs. My guess is that they wouldn't allow him to coach in the college football playoff because of the massive conflict of interest created due to signing day on December 3rd through December 5th. Also, keep this in mind. Ole Miss not allowing him to coach in many ways helps Lane because it doesn't make him out to be the bad guy for abandoning his team. So if it all goes down this way, it will be announced publicly and not kept a secret. I see no way that Lane Kiffin, Ole Miss, and UF or LSU could enter into this type of agreement and keep it a secret. And I see no way that Lane Kiffin, Ole Miss, and UF or LSU could keep it quiet through early signing day. You just can't have coaches, players signing for a coach who knows they aren't going to be there, but is somehow keeping it a secret. That's not realistic. Also, if Lane leaves, Ole Miss is going to need a coach. So they're going to be needing to looking for a plan B, a plan C, and so on. They aren't going to wait to start to fill that vacancy until after the college football playoffs. They're going to start right away and try and get that coach in the door as quickly as possible. So on the long shot, let's say Ole Miss does allow Lane to coach in the college football playoffs while they actively search for a new coach. Then someone else will be responsible for handling signing day in the interim at both Ole Miss and UF or LSU. And if Ole Miss makes it deep into the playoff with Lane coaching and the transfer portal opening up in January, Lane is just going to have to multitask. But again, I personally would not bet on Ole Miss telling him no, which frees him up to go to the other team and saves his reputation because he's going to be able to say, I wanted to coach these kids. I asked to coach these kids and they told me no. Now, what do you guys think? Do me a favor and let me know down in the comments. We appreciate you guys' thoughts. Make sure that you are signed up on the Sleeper app using our code CFA for a 100% match on your first deposit up to $100. We appreciate you guys here watching College Football Addiction.